We are 20 days to the event. It's crunch time. That have somewhat acceptable levels of equality in genders, social. They are still struggling to even reach 30%. It's slightly easier than becoming a doctor.
This is episode 14 of Crownsmen Energy, and today we are featuring Claudia Gomez-Villeneuve. She is the founder of the Women in Engineering Summit, and she's here to discuss the importance of diversity in heavy industry and how they are working to keep women in engineering. But before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. First up, we have Savinaw Equipment. Are you working on pipelines, oil and gas projects, renewable energy, or LNG, and you're looking to save some cash? Well, visit Savinaw Equipment as they have industrial pumps, electrical equipment from motors to transformers, and even surplus pipe and much, much more available now. Visit them at savinawequipment.com where you will find more equipment every day. Next up, we have Power Zone Equipment. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com. Well, let's get on with this episode. Here's Jared Downey and Claudia Gomez.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crownsmen Energy. I am your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show, we have Claudia Gomez-Villeneuve. Claudia, how did I do? Was I close?
Perfect. You got it.
I feel like Gowdy judges my naming a lot on the show because it's like every second guess. I just can't quite get it right. But Claudia, you've started, and it's on the third annual, the Women's in Engineering Summit, which is a really neat event that takes place. Of course, you founded it a couple years ago when live events were a thing, but in 2020, it's a little bit different. So can you talk a little bit about what the summit is, its goal, but then also how you've adapted it in 2020?
Sounds good. No, thank you, Jared, for inviting me to speak today. Because it's an opportunity. We are 20 days to the event. It's crunch time.
Yeah. Wow.
It is crunch time. The Women in Engineering Summit was an invention of. It was me. I started with it first in my industry, oil and gas. We had a major change in the price of oil. And when the oil price crashed, a lot of women left the oil and gas industry. It was the effort that we had been doing for the last 30 years in getting more women to work in oil and gas. We sort of started losing it when the oil price crashed. So that was the beginning of it. I said, we need a place where we can tell people, and especially women, to stay in the industry. So I called it the Women in Engineering Summit because I'm an engineer. And we started having it on live events across Alberta. The challenge of this summit is we're looking for practical solutions, and we're so comfortable with the theory and let's do this. This is a great policy. No, our summit is about solutions, practicable, strategic solutions for people to apply the next day in their career, because we have a challenge. I don't know if you know this, but there's an initiative in Canada called the 30 by 30 initiative. So that was the mission. I immediately attached the event to that mission. 30 by 30 means that by the year 2030, Canada would like to boast that 30% of our newly licensed engineers and geoscientists will be female. That is considered a tipping point for the number of women in engineering in Canada. So that was the goal. And our first event was all about the 30 by 30. Our second event, the second year, was all about that. We had it in multiple cities. The third one, COVID. We got hit with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But for a person that's in charge of the project management of it all, it was actually a good thing to be able to reduce the scope, because we can reach more people. We can reach more people online. So everything got moved online. All the presenters, the panelists, because we have two different panels for the summit, one on the 30 by 30 progress. We're in 2020, so we have 10 years to go. So we need to keep track of progress. And the second one is a diversity panel, because we are beyond women. This is now a multicultural, multi-gender situation. So we have a diversity panel as well. And all this is happening on October 23, Friday, October 23, 2020. And we hope, we already have people from different provinces in Canada and one in the US. So we're hoping to grow that audience as well.
Did you have to change the date for the event?
We always had it in September. Yeah. We always had it in September.
Oh, so you just moved it about a month. That's better than some events. Some events try to go virtual, had to put it to quite later dates or even the following year, right? I was going to ask Claudia a couple things that you stated right off the beginning, and I wanted to we're going to get into some hard stats later on in the show, but I wanted to just sort of get, because you worked I think for Enbridge for almost 18 years, I think, right?
16, yeah.
16 years. And so it's funny because when you said about, there's these sort of policies and stuff, but you're looking for practical solutions. You very much sounded like an engineer. that engineering approach.
Can't help it.
Exactly. So from your sort of outlook within the industry, when the price of oil went down, and you said a lot of people were of course leaving the industry, but in women specifically, did you get a sense of why specifically a lot of women were leaving the industry?
It's a great question, because there's two fronts to this phenomenon. And one is when you are making decisions on who to let go in your organization, you tend to keep the people with the most experience first, if they're not too expensive. And then you start trimming what you think is the fat, right? And a lot of women are in the supporting services of oil and gas. And those tended to be the first ones targeted. And a lot of new engineers and a lot of new geoscientists were in the supporting roles of organizations, as opposed to the management, as opposed to the project directors, as opposed to the leaders of departments. So then when you start trimming the support, and that's where women tend to be allocated, or they are able to convince people to hire them for those jobs, then that's the first thing that went during the trimming of these organizations. When the oil price crashed, Jared, it was immediately we had to stop mega projects, large projects, medium, and the small projects had no chance. I mean, we needed this economy to be strong to even be able to afford a project. So that was the first front. When you're trimming staff and support staff gets gone first, that's where the women are found, typically in the world of engineering and geoscience. The second front is...
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a quick question on that, Claudia. So just to clarify, so what ends up happening is because there are more women make up a larger percentage of not larger percentage, but there is more women new to the engineering industry, so that those, so as they kind of come in at a later date, then of course they exit at a quicker date when the industry goes down. Quite simply, right? Is that sort of the situation?
That's one.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I mean, if they have a lot of experience, they tend to stay in the support roles just to be able to balance their work and life. So they tend to be in those roles to begin with.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The second front is management. Women like me, because I was a supervisor in Enbridge, women in management. We are supervisors, managers, directors, vice presidents, right? When they had to trim management levels, they of course offered a letter. You have a choice. You can stay in your role, but in a demoted position. So you have to go lower in your level of employment, level of management, or you can take the package and go, take the layoff package. So when you ask that question to a man and they see I still have the money, I just get a position that's lower in the system, they stay. That is an easy decision to make. Money and almost at the same level as before, I'm going to stay. But when you offer it to a woman in management, is a very different reaction. The first reaction we get is, I don't have to do this hard job anymore. Really? You're going to pay me to stop fighting against the system? Because to be able to become a manager, a supervisor, or a director in engineering as a female, we work twice as hard to be able to get there. Why? There's all kinds of psychological reasons why it's easier for men to get promoted than women when the system is mostly men, right? But that was the reaction that women got. They said, you want me to stop and take a year off with this, or 6 months off with this package? So the first reaction is relief. The second one is, oh, so I'm not needed. I'm not appreciated. You've been telling me I'm not appreciated this whole time, and now you're telling me, give me a letter that says we really don't need you in the management position anymore. So then we go for it. Okay, I get it. I get the message. Money is probably like the third thing that comes up in the mind of these female engineers, because unless they're the first breadwinner in the house, they can actually take some time and find a better position where they're either appreciated more, or maybe this is the chance to change careers. So that triple-headed monster chair that I just explained caused hundreds of women, if not thousands of women in management, in engineering, to take the package. And it's sad. It's sad that we have a system that when you are offered the choice of staying or leaving a job, you think it's better to leave. And that's what we're trying to fix. We're trying to fix that, first of all, impression on women professionals in engineering. And second, maybe the companies should not be sending those messages. And I know it's almost like asking for special treatment, but it's not special treatment. It's fair treatment. This is the expectation of these professionals. They're working really hard to get to these positions. You have to understand their impression. It's almost like this whole diversity culture that we're trying to develop now is to understand the perspective of so many people. If you're a 30-year-old white male, your perspective is completely different from a 60-year-old white male. Just the ages, 30 to 60. So if we want to understand both of them, now imagine every decade, every race, every gender, every educational background, every social background, every country they came from. There's thousands of different perspectives on work and careers, right? So our job as the owners, the holders of the engineering industry, is to understand that when you send a letter like that to a woman that's been fighting 7 years to become a manager in engineering or oil and gas, when she sees that letter, it's a very different reaction from when a man sees that letter. So that's what we're trying to teach. One of the sessions in the summit is, it's not that they don't appreciate you. This layoff letter is an opportunity, right? So hopefully that'll help women come back. We want them to come back because we lost numbers. Yeah.
I'm trying to, and I'm sitting here because, obviously, we said a white man 30, so I'm 1 year older than that. So I fall into that demographic without the engineering side of it. So, and I'm sitting here and I'm trying to understand, actually, if I was running a firm, and of course, if an industry downsizes, I mean, there's going to be either layoffs and there's going to be payoffs and people are going to step down. That happens. I mean, it happens across all industries. energy's probably arguably been hit the hardest in some ways, because you've got these high-paying jobs. Like let's say the restaurant industry. If somebody's working as a waiter or a waitress, they're not making $200,000 a year, whereas in an engineering, these are high paying. I mean, these people have high payments, and there's a lot at stake when they lose their job. So what I'm trying to understand, if I was running that firm, and I had to make that call, and you said it's sort of like getting special treatment, and I know that's not what you're trying to say, but I'm trying to imagine myself in that situation. Because if I went and I handed letters to a bunch of men and it didn't hand it to a bunch of women, that'd be a huge problem. I mean, that'd border on like a human rights offense. So have you thought about how that should have been approached, or is it, but in that you also ended off saying sort of also educating women as it's an opportunity, not an insult. So what do you think is the primary driver, or like how should a company approach it if you could make that call? And then how should women approach it, again, if you could make that call on their behalf? I wouldn't complicate that question too much.
I'm glad you think I'm a sociologist. I'm so glad you think I'm a psychologist.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a little bit of an unfair question. But I guess maybe just how you would, yeah, I know. It's a tough question. But I was just, when I heard it, I thought, okay, I see the challenge, and I was trying to put myself in the situation. I was trying to think, I actually have no idea how I would approach it. So I was just curious if part of the summit, through the discussions, if sort of any of solutions have come out of those discussions, I guess would be a better way to ask the question.
So let me tackle it this way. We were talking about trimming support staff that is highly populated by women, especially in project management and oil and gas. And what do you do with the management, the women that are in management? So this is the support staff, this is the women in management.
Right.
They're both getting the same message. You are not needed, right? And it's interesting when you are given a choice to stay or to go, you need a huge team on your side to advise you, because there's actually rewards for achieving diversity numbers. There's huge, not just with the government. The government rewards companies that achieve diversity targets. The market rewards companies that achieve diversity targets. And typically, they calculate a number, how much more money you make when there's a diverse workforce. And the number has been as high as 20%. Like, it's not a tiny little blip. 20% more profit when you have a diverse workplace, right? So when you're going to lay off people and you want to make sure that the government rewards you for your diversity numbers, and you want the market, the industry in general, to reward you for the diversity numbers, and you want to gain those business case higher profits rewards, these three is the reason why people consider it special treatment, because we're trying to achieve a certain business goal. If I was in that room before they printed that letter, right, to, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, my friends, I think there was 20 of us that took the letter, took the package to go. We were all in management. So 20 of us, different companies, not just the one I was in. If I was in that room before those letters got printed, I would have asked the lawyer, and I would have asked the diversity vice president, are we messing up the organization by sending these letters? And they would have had to put us, look at the biography of every one of those people and see, maybe we shouldn't send this one. Let's maybe spare 3. Of these 20 that I'm going to send, I'm going to take these 3 and I'm going to put them aside. Why? I can give any reason. That department is critical, or that department has a mega project coming out. Because you're going to love this, because as a sociologist, when they look at people, when they do census, the government does a census, we are listed, I am listed in like 6 different categories. So there's the category of being female. There's the category of being an immigrant from South America. There's the category of having reached a master's degree in engineering. I hit the category of parent. I don't know if they separate parents of 1 or parents of 3. I got 3. And I hit the category of Hispanic. That's a whole different, it's not just immigrant, it's Hispanic. And I hit the category of this person wants to be in construction. You know how many women are leaders in construction? Not that many. And the ones that are in there work really hard to get there. So I hit like 6 different check boxes, which helped the company, or would have helped the company, maintain their rewards from the government, the rewards from the market, because the market also congratulates and rewards companies that have diversity, and the rewards from the business case, the business side. How I see a project, especially a pipeline project, is very useful to the company in the long term. Extremely useful. I see it from a different perspective. I see it from the perspective of being an immigrant and wanting my country to be better, my new country, from the perspective of having children that are going to eventually find a job in this industry. I see it from a very interesting perspective. It's not better, it's just different. We just want difference. So when you have all these special cards on your deck, there's some that you need to keep. Don't show them to the other players, right? And I think that's where they ignore that. They just went with plain black and white. We're going to send all these letters to all these managers and supervisors and directors without thinking of the consequences.
Right.
Because it took them years, decades to get these numbers up, and we did it in 1 month. Yeah.
And within 1 month, I think, and that's sort of what I was trying to get to, and I think you've done a good job. It's a very hard topic. That's the thing. It's you're coming in, and this is long form. Fortunately, if we were on a 5-minute quick interview, I mean, it would be almost impossible to have the discussion. But yeah, and I think the one thing that you said, if you could have been in that room, how which check boxes you look at, that can all be discussed. But if it at least had been discussed, there could have been an approach that could have that could have benefited the company and the employees in a way that wasn't looked at properly. I want to talk about, you mentioned now jumping over to the Women's in Engineering Summit. Can you touched on it briefly, but can you talk a little bit about now from the women's side, what sort of messaging you're getting out? I see you have a speaker. I want to get this right. One of your keynotes is an aerospace engineer, Natalie Panek. Panek is probably how you say her name. And then there's panelists, and there's a whole lineup of speakers that you have. Is there sort of an undertone of a theme a message that you're trying to get out? Is there sort of, does it change up a little bit of sort of what education you're trying to get out there as well? What's sort of the setup in content wise?
Sounds good. The first year, Jared, it was purely 30 by 30. How to get women to not just go into engineering, but graduate from engineering, and then work those 4 years that they have to work in the professional industry before they get their title, their license, a professional engineer. Because when they become PEngs, professional engineers, we can count them on the 30 by 30 initiative. That initiative is very clear. They have to become PEngs, not just graduation rates. PEng, professional engineer. When a person is professionally licensed, we consider that their entire career is open to them, as opposed to never getting professional designation and staying on a lower position or a supporting role. So when that was the first year, purely numbers. We need PEngs, right?
Right.
And we want them to identify as women. So there might be men who are PEngs now and will evolve to becoming women. We can count them. this is the beauty of this gender, this opening to the new gender identities, because there's not just two. There's at least, I counted 18 the other day. I'm sure there's more. So we have a specific target of 30 by 30. That was the first year. Then we got the feedback from the attendees. And the feedback was, can you talk about these other things too? And we, the panel, the program that you see now, Jared, is after 2 years of feedback forms. People want to know things like unconscious bias. And it's not just women, men want to understand it too. What do you mean I make decisions through a filter? And women are like, what do you mean I understand things through another filter? So we need information on unconscious bias, because sometimes we have all the business might supporting the more women in engineering, then the money's there, these systems are there, and then there are no results. So this is the one that we have right now. The feedback from this one will be used for the program for next summit. So right now, there is a need to understand unconscious bias, how women see what their bosses do and how the bosses see what their women employees do. There is a need to understand the future of your career. So we talk about dream jobs. And in that session on dream jobs, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. And we're going to talk about finding the perfect job so you can actually campaign to find the angel to hire you for that perfect job. So we're going to talk, I think that session has a slide where they talk about, I think, 100 different ways of being an engineer. We think that we can only be a mechanical engineer and work in oil and gas. And then if you lose that job, you leave the industry. No, there's 50 things you can do with a mechanical engineering degree. So that's part of the discussion, how to be more diverse, creative with your engineering degree. We want you to stay. We want you to stay as a professional engineer so we can count your number. What can we give you so that you stay in the industry? We have enough real estate agents. We have enough accountants. We have enough engineers that leave the industry to go do some other role. So that's another discussion. And all the other panels are about, we know what you're going through. These are ways of you preparing so they can stay. Because I would like to go to a retirement party for 100 women in engineering. I would love to go to that party. No, they retire so many more years earlier. I missed the event. We need them to stay and to stay for life.
Do you think part of it, when you mentioned that educational piece, which I'm sure applies to men and women, but that educational piece, and I'm so far from an engineer, so it's hard for me to understand it. When you think part of it is that you get these, you get locked into a certain industry, is there a lack of awareness on where you can apply your skills in other engineering practices and in other fields? Or is engineering, when you get into the pipeline, the oil and gas industry engineering, are you pretty limited, or can you transfer those skills to another sector of industry?
This is interesting. When we go to school, we are indoctrinated in that we work on this degree. This is the degree you're supposed to work in. And in this industry, these are the companies that you're supposed to work for. So there's a lot of indoctrination in that we're not allowed to deviate too much from our scope of study, because then that requires more education. So you can cover that unknown field. Engineers are constantly taking courses and master degrees, because to be comfortable executing design and construction and operation of things, they trust you more if you have the degree or the course or the years of experience in that industry. So in engineering, it's hard to switch from one side to the other. I think it's the same for medicine. They want them to specialize. Right. And it's hard to go from heart surgery, cardiology, to obstetrics. So that's kind of similar. So you're an expert in heart and then you want to deliver babies. Where's your master's, or where's your, additional education? Engineering is the same. Oh, you're expert in gas pipelines and you're a mechanical engineer, and now you want to switch to substations, electrical substations. So that is a little, you can do it, because when you work in a big company, you get to do everything at the same time. So you have the resume for it. But for women, it's even more valuable that they see the creativity in the roles. There's a job called chocolate engineer. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
I should have applied to that job years ago. Chocolate engineer. You need engineers to make chocolate and beer. Beer engineer is another job title. We don't know what to search for. And companies may mislabel these jobs too. So if I want to keep women in engineering for life as professional engineers, I need to teach them how to find those jobs that fit their education. Because it's a very colorful world out there.
That really stands out for me, is that educating, because we do well. One of the engineering that I've had to make shift together on our show for all the production that we do. Sound engineers, and you research what they do, and it's just all these unbelievable things, and having people understand, like you said, a chocolate engineer, a beer engineer, there's sound. It's so vast. I guess one thing that always stands out to me too would be a struggle, like you mentioned, if you have 3 children, not if you have 3 children, it's an extra layer of challenge if you're working as an engineer, trying to upgrade your skills and plus raise children. That would be. You've probably experienced. I've seen that you've got here. Where is it? I was just looking at it and I lost it. Because you did your master's, you got from your a certificate in project management in 2002 to 2004, or 2000. Yeah, so over 2 years you got that. Was that while you're working? I'm assuming you were getting that certificate. Is that right?
I was on maternity leave.
Oh. So you had 9 months.
The baby was project number 1, and the certificate was project number 2. Simultaneous.
Wild. Yeah, what I was going to ask Claudia too is this event. Do companies come? Do you have representative from companies coming to hear these discussions, to sort of take notes, so that they sort of have added information when they're going back in their meetings and making these decisions? Do you see them coming and attending this?
That's actually the largest portion of our attendees. They're employee groups that come together. So the company has, I don't know, 2 or 3 employee resource groups, ERGs, and they send them specifically to events like this to learn more, so they can bring it back to the company and update the policies, right? So we have companies sponsoring 10 employees to come together. And one of them is either HR director or is in charge of the employee resource groups for diversity and gender. So we get groups of employees that come from the company. We have only had 2 CEOs so far. I would love to get more CEOs and more presidents of companies. They delegate it to their frontline sometimes, but I would like to see more CEOs. When we had the 2 that I mentioned, one was so understanding of the mission. He was so clear in his head that when he was speaking, the audience was shocked, because the audience was not expecting those 30 by 30 friendly comments to come out of a CEO, right? Never mind that it was a male, right? It was just mind-blowing. So when we see that on a stage, a CEO speaking like that, or a group of CEOs sitting together in the conference and taking notes, it almost gives you hope that it's not going to be just one of the 100 topics or documents they have to approve in a board meeting. No, it's in their head. it's fascinating. I would like to see more CEOs come, but for now, I'm okay with the HR director.
Well, maybe after this, a few more CEOs will be joining you. I know personally that there are a few that are watching almost every episode, so you might see that. What do you? I'm going to ask another. It's probably another hard question. We could have done a show just on this, but both positive and negative. What do you think is the hesitation for a CEO to come to this event? I mean, obviously, besides being busy and running the companies and sending their HR director and all that sort of thing. But what do you think would be a hesitation, or what are sort of the roadblocks that you would see in your sort of communication? Where do you see that sort of hesitation from people at that executive level?
I think it's their board of directors. I think it's not part of their job description. It's I think they should make it part of their job description that once a year or twice a year or once every quarter, you are supposed to go to these industry events that promote diversity, because diversity is the new business case, right? So diversity of any kind. I'm not talking just about gender, I'm talking about everything. Different industries. Some companies only hire two professions, only two professions. There's diversity in thought, right? Age differences, gender differences, cultural differences. So if they put that in the job description of a CEO, that once a quarter or once a year, you have to attend one of these events that promote diversity and sit next to your HR person. So the HR person can explain to you what is happening on stage, because you're listening to it. I don't get it. And then the HR person says, remember policy number 12.7? And that's what we need. The board of directors is not going to support the CEO spending, I don't know, a day in the middle of month end attending an event for women in engineering. It has to be intentional. It has to be a job item in their annual report. How many events you attend this year to increase diversity in our workforce? And not the HR person, just the person has it, but not the CEO. Yeah.
There was one of sort of my, of course, they're in some trouble now, so it's sort of tainted that perspective. But the old CEO of GE, Jack Welch, who I've read his book and that, and one of the things that he said, to touch on what you just referenced, is that the CEOs spend way too much time with their CFO and not near enough time with their HR director. And I mean he had arguably one of the most aggressive companies in the world, and now he was very hard on people. He had high expectations of people, but he approached it from not just the numbers, but from the HR director's perspective. And he said, if you're running a team, a sports team, you want to be talking to the coach. You want to be talking to the person that's actually with the players, not the person selling seats. That's, if you want to win. And and no, it's very important, because it's not that every idea will get taken. Like you said, you personally, you fall into 6 different categories, and now every other person is going to fall into it. It's a big job. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. But if you're at least in communication, ideas start to formulate out of it on way to execute. Claudia, I want to talk. Alberta Innovates she innovates. I'm messing this up. Alberta Innovates, I believe, facilitates She Innovates Alberta. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know a little bit about the organization, but not too much. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to go quite quickly into some stats, before we sort of run out of runway for the interview. So can you talk a little bit about Alberta Innovates, who they are, what their role is, and then She Innovates?
Perfect. So that's one of our major sponsors for the event. They're not only sponsoring these interview, but they're also bringing students. So they gave us money to bring tickets, to get tickets for students. And we have universities asking us, can you please give us tickets for the students to attend? So they give a bunch of tickets. Here's the money. Buy tickets for any university or any college you want that wants to attend, or any technical school, because we have women in engineering and technology too. So their mission, and this is what I'm talking about, Jared, of attaching the board of directors' expectations of the company to some diversity target. Alberta Innovates, their job is to make Alberta more innovative. And innovation comes from having access to technology, having access to research, and having access to different trains of thought. So Alberta Innovates got it. They know. If we have more diversity of thought in technology, we're going to make more money for the country. It's fact. It's a fact. It's almost like you're looking at the solution of a problem. If you're looking at a Rubik's Cube and you're only the red person, you only see the red cubes, right? If you're a red person, I don't see yellow, I don't see blue, I don't see green here. And to solve the problem, you need to see all the colors because you have to do the Rubik's Cube. So we need different people, somebody that sees in red, somebody that sees in blue, yellow, and green to be able to work this. And then a person that sees in 45 degree, because when you turn the Rubik's Cube, you're not looking at the flat face, you're looking at the block on an angle. So we need diversity of thought, ages, genders, religion, cultural background, education, their family status, to be able to see one problem, which is the Rubik's Cube, from all the different faces, all the different perspectives. And if we keep our industries using only red colored people and green colored people, that Rubik's Cube will never get solved. It'll be half solved, or no, 1/6 solved, not even half. So that's what Alberta Innovates is pushing for. Their mission is to create opportunity for not just people that are born in our country, but people that are immigrating to our country because they need to be successful too. The only reason we let immigrants into our country is because they bring money, education, brain, and will to make our country better, right? So that's Alberta Innovates created the She Innovates program. So She Innovates program, because that is a special part of money for women in technology, entrepreneurs, researchers, educators. And then another one that we haven't talked about is Innotech, INNO Tech, Innotech. That's another subsidiary of Alberta Innovates. And they have a specific role, a specific one. Innotech is nanotechnology and a bunch of other technologies that are not very obvious or very popular in Canada yet. So they are going deeper and deeper and deeper into what opportunities we need to make available for entrepreneurs, researchers, educators in our country. So that's their mission, and they get rewarded for every change in that 30 by 30 target. So they're supported by the government. So the government is actually giving them money and gives them an umbrella of power to be able to push this, because if the government does nothing, it's really hard for the normal citizen to find those opportunities for advanced technology. And then they go to the States, they move to another country, they move to Australia, they move to the UK. I'm going to go get it in China, I'm going to get it in Japan, because in Alberta or in Canada, I'm not going to find it. So that's why they're so interested in the 30 by 30 and in the Women in Engineering Summit.
You talked about going to other countries, and I want to touch on some of those. I mean, I went to Japan, so it comes up in the show a lot. And of course, they were on a stat that I saw, and I'm sorry, Japan, if anybody from Japan is listening, but your women in engineering is lacking. The other stats is like, okay, there's a bit of a range, but in Japan, it's only 5% of women are in engineering. I've never seen. I did not expect that stat. But it's just crazy. So that's the negative side. Are there a couple countries that sort of stand out that have done a really good job of attracting? And I know that engineering there's people from all over the world that come in. But is there a couple of countries that really stand out for you for doing a good job in attracting women to the engineering sector?
That's a loaded question, because some countries have high numbers of women in engineering, practicing engineering, but the country itself doesn't have a good record on equality. And then you have countries that have high status in equality. The citizens feel like the government is listening to them, everybody's participating equally, yet they have low numbers of women in engineering. So it's a very interesting situation. So what we have found from the previous summits is that countries with low level of equality, meaning women don't have the same access to opportunities as the rest of the population, they buy the access to the opportunities with their education, with their degree. So there's a huge appetite to become an engineer in countries like India, in countries like Panama, because it's almost like your price of entry into the market. So you're a woman, but you have an engineering degree. Okay, you're okay now. You can come in now. So countries that have very, very low levels of equality, not just socially, but economically, there's a high number of women in engineering because they buy the access to those opportunities with their degree. And I love it. I love it that we have engineering degrees that can give women that power. Then we have countries where equality has reached popular levels, and dads tell their daughters to study construction and moms tell their sons to study nursing. Canada is one of those happy countries where most parents are like, whatever you want to do, I'm okay with. So there is no need to buy access to opportunities through an engineering degree or a law degree or a medical degree. So it's interesting that we have that
is interesting. Yeah, I never thought it that way.
Yeah. So Panama is one of the countries with the highest ratio of women engineers. It's almost 56% of the engineers are female. Why? Well, maybe because they have the Panama Canal. They need a lot of engineers, but it is an interesting situation. They buy the access to equality through their engineering degree. And then countries like Canada and United States, for comparison's sake, that have somewhat acceptable levels of equality in genders, social, they are still struggling to even reach 30% practicing engineers.
So they're not, because they're in a way they're not organically attracting or actively attracting women to that field. But I think there's other stats too. I think you saw notes where there's like men are dropping out of engineering as well. Like I think when we first talked, you said in Canada most of the women engineers in Canada are not Canadian born. They are immigrants that have come in and are practicing engineering here in Canada. Is that right?
Not most, but it's becoming an attractive way to reach that target. So there's more campaigns towards internationally educated professionals that are female to become PNGs. It's just that it's a challenge because husband and wife come in from Iran, let's say. Iran has a lot of engineers, female and male. So they come to Canada from Iran. They both have the degree, but the process is so difficult to become a PNG that they put all the effort in the men. They put all the effort in the men because it's expensive and it's time consuming and it's risky.
There might be kids involved and all that, those sort of things. Yeah.
And he hasn't found a job yet. So why would we keep the other person busy doing the same work? So that's the challenge. We have an opportunity here to get those 30 by 30 numbers achieved in the next 10 years, Jared. We cannot make any more local families convince their daughters to study engineering. That number has been reached, I think. Now the number is going to come from internationally trained professionals that already took their engineering degrees in other countries, and they're coming here and they want the opportunity to work. They worked in ExxonMobil in Nigeria. Like these are people who had amazing jobs. They build chemical plants in Nigeria for ExxonMobil, and then they come here to Canada and they don't qualify for a single engineering job. So we have an opportunity there, Jared.
Yeah, it's the stereotype of the doctor who's driving a taxi, right? It's you. My wife works I probably shouldn't say where she works on the show, but she works in immigration, so she sees it a lot of times where, it's very common across that where people they built like these unbelievable structures, they're engineers or scientists or whatever. They've just done these unbelievable things, in the Emirates and that sort of thing. And then they come here and so there's a couple parts to that though, that you said something and I wanted to sort of touch on it is, one, is it hard to have your degree in another country? Just something I simply don't know. I know it for like doctors and things, it's quite challenging. But if you've got a degree in engineering in another country, how hard is it to transition to being an engineer in Canada? That would be one question I have. And the second part is for people here what would attract, why do you think more women, let's say in Canada, just specifically, why don't more women go into engineering? So I know that's two very separate questions. So let's start with the first one. How hard is it to transition degree-wise when you come to Canada from another country, let's say Iran? Do you have to go through it all again?
It's slightly easier than becoming a doctor. Slightly easier than becoming a doctor. Doctor is probably the hardest one because you're dealing with people's lives right in your hands. So to become an engineer, a professional engineer, a PEng titled, full license in Canada, sometimes you have to repeat 2 years of your education. So if you have 5 years, you have to repeat 2 of them. You have to go back to school sometimes. Or they ask you to take a master's degree. But the undergraduate, the first 4 years or 5 years of engineering right out of high school, those are even more important than the master's and the PhD. So even though you took the master's and the PhD, they don't count that. It has to be undergraduate courses with the right name and the right number, because we are in Canada, we like to follow the rules. In Canada, we're very good at following the rules. So the rules are, you have to take statics, dynamics, chemistry, and if your university calls them something else, or they only cover 80% of the curriculum, not 100, but 80, the good 80, let's say the good 80, then that is hard for Canada to match. Because why are we going to exempt this? So then we tell them, take 7 courses. Wow, take 7 courses in engineering. But I've been working in, chemical plants for 30 years. I don't remember statics. So that's what make them go through to get their PEng. Some engineers are very lucky. They come to Canada and they find a really good job, and the employer gives them the right level of experience in the work. So then the employer becomes almost the provider of credits for their status. But then when they go to check the education, your education doesn't match. Your university never called us back, so we don't know what to do. So it's slightly easier than a doctor. And I tell my students, I teach engineering. I teach actual calculus and statics. I tell my students that we think that doctors are the only ones taking care of people's life and death.
Have you ever driven over a bridge?
One doctor can kill maybe accidentally one person at a time. Engineers can kill 1,000 at a time. So
you're gonna scare me. No.
You don't believe it, but that's how it is. It is a challenge, and but they're protecting the public, because we don't just give somebody a degree because of their cool job in another country. We want them to follow the rules, but the system, we need to help people, navigate that system.
Yeah, and to the second part of that, the second question I asked, you said in a country, and I've seen these similar stats, and I'm not going to start pulling them because I don't have them in front of me, so I don't want to put out misinformation, but I have heard the stats where you have countries where the equality has definitely evened out more so, and that you still have, let's say, nursing, you still have an abundance of women going into nursing, and you still have an abundance of men going into engineering, although there are stats that more men drop out of engineering, and so the stats are quite heavy. So not to really get into that, Claudia, but I am interested, what if you were talking to young women who are, let's say, in grade 11 and 12, what would you say to them that is attractive about an engineering career?
So that's the other part of that 30 by 30. We need more Canadian families to tell their daughters, it's okay for you to study engineering. Perfectly okay. It's as good as medicine, because we it's a world race. All the countries are racing towards something, and that race will be won with innovation. Mm-hmm. And innovation, the price of innovation is diversity, because if you don't have diversity, innovation will take longer to be achieved. So I'm the mother of a teenage girl, and right now she's in the middle of making the decision of where to go to university next year. So I am in that exact spot that you're asking. Do I convince her to go into engineering, or do I let her choose whatever she wants, meaning whatever society told her that it was acceptable? Because see, we think our kids are making a decision out of their own heart. No, they're making a decision based on society told them. So sometimes you have to fight with them a little bit, because society is sending the wrong message sometimes, right? And the third one is knowing what I know about how difficult it is to become an engineer, knowing what I know about how difficult it is to be promoted as a supervisor in engineering, knowing what I know about everything that's happening to my friends and my colleagues and my students and my attendees at the Women Engineering Summit, knowing what I know, do I still want my daughter to go there? So it is quite there's a storm going in my head, because I'm the promoter of women in engineering, yet I'm doubtful and hesitant about making my beautiful, sweet daughter, who's an A+ student in school, go into that field. I would love to count her. I would love to count her in the 30 by 30, because the women that are graduating from Canadian schools in engineering in the next 2-3 years are the ones that we will be counting in 2030. Right. So in the next 2-3 years, these women that are graduating from high school in the next 2-3 years will actually be the ones that we're counting in 2030. So she's one of them. And it's crazy. It's like my heart is like, no. Let her stay in a field where there's more women. That's the main one. That's the main reason that holds parents back. I want to send my daughter to a place that's friendly to them. And it's not that engineering is not friendly, it's that engineering is a little bit antiquated. They have the old way of thinking. And I want my daughter to, enter a world where there's at least some semblance of gender balance, although that's not essential, because a lot of us thrive in engineering when we're the only woman in the room. but we want them to be protected somehow. So we think that if there's more women in this environment, then the practices will be more women friendly. And the industry of engineering is very antiquated. We still behave like we're in the 60s. Everybody works 40 hours a week, minimum. Everybody works full time. Everybody stays in one department simultaneously for years. So we still have the mentality of stay, stuck in one place with the same schedule, the same expectations. Meanwhile, medicine, they already got it. They already figured out how to make this a gender balanced profession. I get jealous, Jared, when I see 51% first year medical students that are female. Wow. I have the picture because one of my friends, one of my mentees, I'm a mentor too. One of my mentees is entering her first year of medical school. So they took a big class photo. And it was half women, half men. And she says, no, we're 51% of the first year of medical school. And for graduation, it's about the same. And I said, what did medicine figure out that engineering hasn't? And then I figure out that when they graduate, because you can work in hospitals, you can work in clinics, you can make your own office. Female graduates in medicine, specifically obstetrics, they get together and they make a firm to take care of pregnant women. 7 of them. Each one is on call 24 hours a week.
Oh, I see.
They deliver the babies for 24 hours. The other one takes over on Tuesday, the other one takes over on Wednesday, and so on and so forth. If they don't want to work 5 days a week, they don't, because there's 7 doctors in the firm. So that's why women are running to the medical profession, because there's flexibility. There's flexibility. And men, now that we're talking about the men that leave school, we are seeing a drop in the men that enter university, period.
Right, yeah.
That's scary. That's scary. We want them to enter engineering, yes, but any other profession will do too. Any other. But we don't want our boys to not have access to university. I know technical schools are doing well, but even they're seeing a drop in technical schools as well. So we need to keep the men in school. We need to change how school is delivered, for one, because men don't like it this way. They want it this way. And women the same. So how to do this is we need to be more flexible. Engineering needs to be more flexible, and you will see women running into engineering. Running, not walking, running into engineering.
It's that flexibility. And a question that just to wrap up the interview, Claudia, and I have to ask this question because you have had success in the industry. I read your international guest instructor at EAFI in Colombia. You've been a guest instructor. You're an instructor now. Where are you teaching right now?
4 different universities.
Oh, just 4. Okay.
I love it that I get to teach online because they don't need me physically in Calgary now.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, that's there are some advantages to what's going on. So I have to ask to wrap up this interview because you in the medical profession, you use a great example of 7 women getting together and that work-life balance. Again, I don't have the stat in front of me. There's a stat, I wish I had it, where so many women reach about 30, and where a lot of women are having kids and they work at these very demanding jobs, and then they transition out of those jobs. There's a huge stat. I wish I had it. And so it's a real challenge for women to find all that balance. And I understand that. But I have to ask for you, the success you have, how did you approach it? I mean, you've obviously you've gone through the trenches, you've come out the other side, and you're now teaching. You spent 16 years as an engineer, you've got 3 children. How did you do it? How did you approach it in your career? And how has it changed from the beginning of your career till now?
That's a great question, Jared, because there is a famous book by Hillary Clinton, It Takes a Village. It takes a village. The person that got me in the engineering path was actually my dad. My dad. So it takes a dad to get a woman into engineering, because he was very clear. He was a journalist. Actually, I was the first engineer in my family, but they were all journalists and lawyers, all of them, social sciences, right? And he read an article, because he was always looking for news for the newspaper, that said that the future of the world is science and technology. Science and technology. So he said, how do I make my kids more successful? I'm going to push all of them to science and technology. He never pushed any of us to become a journalist. He said, we have enough of that. He never pushed us to become lawyers. We have enough of that. He said, science and technology, you can do whatever you want as long as it means science and technology. So it took my dad to actually get there. And then in high school, it took 2 male professors, one for physics, one for chemistry, to get me to fall in love with engineering. So it takes a village, and sometimes it's not a woman, it takes a man. I would say it takes more a man than a woman, because we see the messages that come from our parents in a different way. We see our mothers do it, so we copy it. But when our fathers say, this is you, you're so totally you, you're like, oh, so you're saying it from your perspective of that's different from mine. It's fascinating. It changes your life. And after that, you marry somebody. Like my husband is 100% supportive of everything. He says, you want to do it? Fine. It takes a village. You need the couple that's going to have the 3 kids, and we're both project managers, to be able to support this endeavor, because it's not by yourself. It's supremely hard to do it by yourself. So it takes a village there. It's and it takes a lot of men to that have supported me to become an engineer and to become a professor now in engineering. I can name 10 men in my career, from my parents, from my dad, to my teachers in high school, to my professors in university, to my first boss. My first boss was incredible. To the boss that let me work part-time. I work part-time in oil and gas, in engineering. That's like unheard of. To the person that hired me now, another man, to hire me to be a professor online. It takes men to get women into engineering. And it's not just women talking to women, although I'm just like my mother. I do exactly what my mom does, just in a different field. She's in political science.
Oh, I see.
So you copy what your mother does, but you go into the path that your father encourages. So it's a team effort.
That's interesting. I will say that was a very humble answer, and I'm sure anybody who watched you through your career would appreciate it. But I am going to have to ask the question in a different way now, because you would have certainly had challenges. And I am guessing that your boss didn't do it just as a favor to let you work part-time in engineering. So in that respect, you obviously were valuable to that company, and then he worked with you to do that. And besides being, of course, a good man and those sort of things. So what did you bring? What did you bring to your career? And I think this is an important question, because it's that everybody's going to get, no matter what, like you said at the beginning, no matter what policy you are, what organization you're a part of, there's going to get to a point where you've got a challenge in your career. There's going to be a roadblock, and it's men, women, all of us are going to face it, and you either crumble in front of it or you get through it. So those roadblocks you hit, how did you approach it? You talked about the support of people around you. We all need that. How did you fight through those roadblocks for you as yourself?
Okay, so that's the center of that nut, right? Is we had our second summit. We had it in Calgary. We were talking to people that have been in the industry for 20 years, men and women, and the discussion ended up in what kind of women are in engineering right now. What personality woman do you need to be able to make it through all the ups and downs and the barriers? What kind of woman? And then we all agreed that it was a certain kind of person, a certain kind of woman. So that's why the number hasn't changed in engineering that much. We still hit the same 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, because it's the same 20% of personalities in society for women, right? Anyone that is a different style, engineering will crush them. And they don't even want to go there. Some people see it from far away and I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah.
So we need different personalities of women engineering. We all tend to have the same skills to see a problem and find the solution in second. So when I was finding these barriers, it was almost like, it's almost like seeing the future. Some people can imagine themselves in this excellent future. And the barrier doesn't become the wall, it becomes the fence that you have to jump over. So I think that's what made a difference for me. I saw the barriers as fences to jump over. And then it became a creative exercise. Okay, I need to go get a trampoline. Where am I going to find this trampoline to be able to jump over that fence? It may because the way my parents raised me. I'm from Colombia, and in Colombia, we have a very strong culture of the dad is the boss, right? Or the parents are the bosses. But it's also matriarchy. There's a lot of women bosses in the Colombian culture, from First Nations people to even modern people. So it's you need that kind of attitude to see the barriers as opportunities. And when I got that letter, because this is closing to the beginning of our presentation, our discussion.
Yeah.
When I got that letter, I was happy. I was extremely happy. It's extremely happy. It's almost like I had been thinking about it for 2 years because I was a supervisor during the layoffs. I had to let people go, cancel projects, right? So I went through that exercise. So I was already thinking, okay, what happens when it comes to me?
Right.
Be very realistic about yourself. So I had 2 years to plan it, 2 years to think about it. But I was never going to leave on my own. It was, no, my future is here. It took the letter. It took the letter to say, no, here is your opportunity. There's 2 letters, one to stay and one to go. And I saw the opportunity to go and start fresh. I still wanted engineering, so I was very clear about that. But I found a different way of executing my dream of engineering. It's sad I'm not in oil and gas anymore as a pipeline engineer, but I want to make sure that I send people to oil and gas. That's my goal. So to do all these things, even now with COVID, teachers were putting our health in the line sometimes for face-to-face classes. Even now, I see this as a fence. Oh, we just have to jump over it. I need to find my trampoline. It's and as long as you have your family to support you and your coworkers and your boss to support you, it's totally doable. But not everybody has that mentality. So we need to make engineering welcoming to all personalities, not just the warrior minds, right? Not just the warrior minds. We need to make engineering accessible to all people because we need their ideas. And Canada is falling behind. That's one of the reasons we have 30 by 30. Canada is falling behind from the rest of the world in the number of people that are doing science and technology. Never mind engineering, just pure science and technology.
Yeah, I looked at the stats, and Canada is, they're not, we're not performing well. And I mean, if you just sit there and slowly bleed out, that is never a solution. So, Claudia, thanks. This is, out of all the interviews, I think I was probably the most stressed about doing this one because I'm not a woman. And so I had this long form discussion about a topic that really is outside. All the other things are very physical sort of conversations we have. It's technology. So this is really our first show of this type. So, I thank you for kind of letting me stumble through it and ask you questions and try to extract the information. I honestly, I feel like we probably could have, there's so much to unpack, which is why something like the summit that you're doing, which is multiple days, multiple discussions where you can actually unpack things and take in information. An hour really isn't much time to have this discussion, but I do thank you for coming on and joining the show. I really do appreciate it. It was a good conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're back so let's make sure and we'll have links to your summit and everything, but let's just confirm the date here on the show. We will put it at the beginning of the episode for everybody as well. When does the Women's in Engineering Summit happen, and how can people get to it?
Sounds good. So the Women Engineering Summit 2020, WES 2020, is happening on Friday, October 23, 2020, and it's a whole day event. Registration is around 7 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time, and we go all day until about 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And it's online, just through Zoom is going to be our platform. Okay. And we hope to get people from all over the world.
Yeah, I hope people, and I hope anybody watching will join it. Thank you, Claudia, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it.
No, I loved it, Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you also enjoyed the interview. If you watched, it's a big topic. So thank you, Claudia, for going through all of it with me. And I hope you do enjoy. I hope you do join the Women's Engineering Summit. Sorry, Women's in Engineering Summit. And we'll have links for you. We'll have where you can go. Please check it out. And thank you to our sponsors. Thank you for watching. Please recommend the next guest on our show. And we will see you on the next episode of Crownsmen Energy.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone that should be a guest, please contact us, info@crownsmen.com. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We will see you on the next episode.